this podcast, we will be looking at storytellers, stories, and the reasons that oral storytelling is important in our world today. You would think with all the technology we have available that stories do not have a place anymore, but they are needed more than ever. For in storytelling is where we find truth, we find reality, and we find the heart of what it is to be human. Welcome to the heart of storytelling. My name is Alyssa, and let's go on an adventure.
This week I spoke with Hungarian storyteller and researcher Csenge. And I really love this episode because of the research that she does behind the scenes that creates the richness that her stories have. And I particularly love it because research is my zone of genius. It's my space too. And I felt like I'd found a kindred spirit in her in this interview. And I got excited about all the things that she got excited about. So I found it a really great episode. And I hope that one day in the storytelling world that we can meet up. I can meet up with all these wonderful people that I'm meeting online because they're just all incredible. I hope you enjoy the interview. Hi, and welcome to this week's episode. This week I'm speaking with Csenge from Hungary. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me.
I'd love to hear about you and your storytelling journey, how you came to be a storyteller and what you're doing now.
That started fairly early. My grandparents told me a lot of stories, and my parents told me a lot of stories. My grandparents lived in a village in Western Hungary, and I spent a lot of my childhood with them, and they still had that local classic folk storytelling tradition, which wasn't as much the big fairy tales as it was just a bunch of trickster stories that my grandfather swore were true and happened in our village. And that's just the kind of kitchen table storytelling that I grew up in. Yeah, that told a lot of stories, and then I got very interested in mythology and legends when I was a teenager. And I loved reading Greek mythology and Irish legends, and my uncle had a couple of those books, and I just went through them, and I really wanted to be a bard. I was reading all these Irish hero tales, and it sounded really great to be a bard, but I was also playing D&D at the time. So but I was informed that wasn't really a career option. So so I ended up applying to archaeology, and that's what I went to university for. Is I got my degree in archaeology. But while I was in university, I found out that there are actually storytellers who make a living from telling stories, and I immediately knew that was what I wanted to do. I finished my degree in archaeology. I never worked as an archaeologist, but I started building a career as a performing storyteller, and I was quite young. I was about 21 when I went to the US with a scholarship. So I applied for a scholarship because I found out that in the US, there is all of this storytelling stuff happening. They have conferences for storytellers and festivals, and you can actually study storytelling at the university. And none of those things existed in Hungary at the time. So I spent a year in the US and met a bunch of American storytellers and went to Jonesboro for the National Storytelling Festival.
Oh, how exciting.
And yeah, it was amazing. I went to all these conferences and just connected with a bunch of people who were professional storytellers. And it was an amazing experience. So after I finished my degree in Hungary, I went back with a Fulbright scholarship, and I got my master's degree in storytelling from East Tennessee State University. And then I stayed on for a PhD in Ohio at Bowling Green, just because I wanted to spend more time in that storytelling environment. But I was commuting between the US and Europe. So in the summers, I was home, and then I started attending the FEST conferences, which is the Federation for European Storytelling, which started in 2008. And I've been going to the conferences since 2009. So I started getting to know European storytellers and going to European festivals. I tell in English and in Spanish, so I love going to Spain for their storytelling events, and that's just what I started doing. And after I came home in 2017, I finished my PhD in the US. So I had to return to Hungary for a mandatory 2-year period because of the Fulbright. And I just happened to get a job at the time with the foundation, an NGO called Virág, which is an organization that supports children in state care. So basically, they have a storytelling program where we train volunteer storytellers who visit group homes, foster homes, every week, and they tell bedtime stories to the kids.
Oh,
And
wow. That must have
I
been
know.
rewarding.
I know it's an amazing job. I have been with them since 2017, and I lead the storytelling program now. There are other programs. We have a mentor program, we have a kindergarten, we have summer camps. So we do a whole lot of things to support the kids, but my part of it is the storytelling program and recruiting and training the volunteer tellers and preparing them for visiting these foster homes and working with the kids and telling bedtime stories. So that's my current day job. And I still do, travel. I still travel and do performances in Hungary and in abroad. But I really love working with Virág as well. So that's what I do now.
Yeah. Well, I connected with you via your social media. And I think one of the things about the internet period is that we can connect. It's, a small community really, but globally it makes it a really rich community to be able to connect online and in online spaces. So what sort of work are you doing in the online space?
I kind of like sharing information about storytelling online. My social media experience started with Facebook once upon a time, but I also have a blog that I've been writing since the first time I was in the US, and now it kind of functions as a storytelling resource. So I have an English and a Hungarian blog, both are active. But the English blog especially, I like to publish the folklore research that I do, and articles about folk tales, and I do a blogging challenge every spring. It just ended yesterday, actually. And I like using it as a database of the stories that I've read and, the performances that I've had. And it's just an ongoing blog site for sharing information. And I believe in that because, as you mentioned, connecting with storytellers around the world, that it's a very, very open community. And I learned that very early on. The moment back then it was a mailing list. But I first found out about storytelling in 2006. And I sent this email to this mailing list called Storytell, saying, "Hey, I'm in Hungary, and I just found out that storytelling is a thing, and this is what I want to do." And I got like 60 emails by the next morning from storytellers around the world. And they were like, "Here's a very cool story, and here's a book you should read, and here's a bunch of advice." They were just giving me all this stuff and all this advice and all these stories, just with no, jealousy or professional competition or whatever. And I just learned very fast that storytellers are a very welcoming community. And to me, the way to participate in that is to offer the same kind of, open resources that I'm very good at finding stories, and I'm very good at researching stories, and I translate a lot of Hungarian materials that are not available in English. So my part of that is putting all of that up on my blog so that people can find it and read it and use it as a resource. And to me, that kind of evens out with all of the help and all of the stories and all of the translations and, all of the support that I've gotten from other tellers over the years.
Absolutely. I've got a friend, Tamas, who is Hungarian. I remember he was my very first mentor, and he was saying in Hungary there are a number of features of the tales which are really unique to Hungary. So when people have those stories and tell them if they miss these elements, whether it be a fox or an object or something, it ruins the whole story. Have you got any particular stories that you know that might have those things in them?
I like to research variations of
Mhm.
folktales.
Yeah.
So one of the things I love doing is that if I like a folktale, or when I was working on a manuscript, because I also publish folktale collections,
Mm.
uh, I look at the Hungarian folktale catalog and I find all the different versions of that tale type that have been recorded.
Mm.
And what I love about it is that the frame of the story can be the same, but every storyteller colored it so differently,
Mm.
and just gave different personalities to the characters or used different symbols. So the cursed brothers in one, that's the tale type that also exists in the Grimm fairy tales and
Mm.
around the world. But in some versions they turn into ravens, and in some versions they turn into swans, and in some versions they turn into crows or
Mm.
other types of birds. Sometimes they turn into bulls or wolves or other kinds of animals. And then I found one, my favorite version, they turn into cranes,
Mm.
which sounded very beautiful.
Is that an
So
Asian version?
no, that's also a Hungarian
Oh,
version.
wow,
It's
really?
also it's a
Yeah.
Hungarian Roma version actually.
Yeah.
Um, but um, but yeah, so I like to look at all of these different variations because it shows you the parts that are consistent
Mm.
across variations. It shows you the core of the story that
Mm.
kind of carries that tale type, however it is dressed up.
Mm.
And it shows you the elements that are for embellishment.
Yes.
So when you compare a lot of variations of folktale, because folktales always had many, many, many versions, or even the same storyteller would tell it differently
Mm.
if it was recorded multiple times from them.
Mm.
It kind of gives you an idea of what needs to stay the same, and what can change just by artistic license.
Mm. I'm curious, like, does Hungary have like a group of collectors of tales? Were there collectors like the Grimms and Asperger and Moe and things like that?
Yes, we are actually, and I didn't know this until I started reading folktale collections from other countries, and I started visiting, bookshops in other
Mm.
countries. But Hungary is actually fairly lucky in terms of folklore collections, and
Mm.
that comes from historical background, that comes from the whole becoming a nation, the
Mm.
history of the Habsburg rule and all of that. But basically our first folktale collection was published in the 1830s, 40s, so not
Mm.
not a long time after the first Grimm
Mm.
book. And it was actually allegedly collected from Hungarian soldiers who served in Vienna.
Wow.
um, and from that point on, we've had hundreds of folktale collecting projects. There were
Mm.
big, national projects run by the Ethnography Museum. There were famous collectors, both men and women,
Mm.
folklorists who collected really well. And very early on, which is also very lucky, they discovered that you kind of have to also pay attention to the personality of the storyteller.
Mm.
So from the mid 1900s, you know, they started including in folklore publications the biography of the folkteller,
Mm.
their personality, their repertoire. It's just the stories together with the person who
Mm.
told them. And that gives you a lot of extra information in terms of reading these folktales. So we have hundreds of folktale collections.
Mm.
The National Museum of Ethnography has this huge archive that has a lot of unpublished material that you can research. And I've spent a lot of time in there finding stories that were never published, and it's
Yeah.
amazing treasures in there,
Yeah.
collected 100 years ago, 150 years ago, that just kind of were part of a project, but they never got published. So we are very lucky in terms of folklore
Mm.
collections. We are very lucky in terms of how much our tradition was recorded and how meticulously it was recorded from a very
Mm.
early time. So
Mm.
it's a good treasure trove of stories to work with.
Absolutely. And so you said you've written some collections of Hungarian tales. Can you tell me more about those and the process that you went through?
Yes. So the one that got published in English in the US is called Dancing on Blades.
Mm.
And it is a collection of folk tales from one specific teller. And her name was Payuk Anna. And she's listed in a Hungarian catalog of folk tales or folk tellers, but she was actually a Rusin woman from Transcarpathia. It's now part of the Ukraine, um, who married into a Hungarian family. So her stories have this richness of a mixing of many cultures.
Mm.
Transcarpathia was already a very multicultural place, and she's lived through, you know, multiple countries without ever moving out of her village. So history kind of moved across her village
Yes.
many, many times. She was born
Wow.
in the 1850s and she died in the 1950s. So
Mm.
but I found some of her folk tales in a very old book, and I got interested in who she was because her folk tales were just so unique and full of these beautiful details. She retold very well-known tale types with a lot of empathy. And so I went to the archives and I dug up the actual collection.
Mm.
And there were, you know, another 50 or 60 stories in there that were never published. And they were hand typed by the collector.
Oh, wow.
And I got those hand typed pages and I went through them. And a lot of those stories made their way into my repertoire because I loved telling them
Mm.
abroad. And I also loved telling them in Hungary because even in Hungary, nobody knew these stories.
Mm.
And then a lot of people kept asking me where they can find them. And to make it a resource and make it available to more people to appreciate these stories, I put together an English translation of 30 of them. And that's what got published as Dancing on Blades.
Oh, that's so awesome. I'm just so excited for you that you got to find this treasure. Oh, that would be such a great thing to
I
do.
know it's really easy, exciting every time I find something like that. It's
Yeah.
just it's a real treasure hunt and amazing stories that I think should be known, you know, should be a
Mm.
part of the global community's
Yeah.
storytelling repertoire. It's good
Yeah.
to add stuff to that.
Yeah. Especially when they've been forgotten and lost or sitting in archives. I mean, they know stories demand to be alive, they want to be out in the world. So that's really great. So you're working on anything else at the moment in terms of publication of things?
Yes, actually, I usually publish a book a year.
Mm.
There is a Hungarian publisher, Mora, that publishes my folktale collections, and I always have, you know, projects planned around different themes. I have a feminist Hungarian folktales collection that was Children's Book of the Year in 2019. And then I have
Congratulations.
thank you. I have international feminist folk tales to follow up with that. I had one that I really loved working on, which is rare versions of famous fairy tale types.
Mm.
So I have, you know, a boy Cinderella story from Cameroon in there, and you know, a Lebanese Snow White type
Mm.
tale, and like all of these rare versions of fairy tales that we mostly know from Grimm.
Yeah.
And I loved working on it. And I made notes for all the stories about how tale types work and
Mm.
how this version relates to the well-known versions. And I keep getting feedback from readers, from parents saying, "Oh, we enjoyed so much," and the kids are trying to guess what story it is. And
Mm.
so I love that project. And right now, I am just finishing up a manuscript for my first collection specifically for adult readers,
Mm.
and it is Forgotten Greek and Roman Myths.
Oh, that sounds like a
So
great project.
it is. I love it so much. This is probably my favorite projects that I ever done for publishing.
Mm.
I love telling myths, and we have a storytelling event series called Myth Off, which is a mythology telling event for adults.
Yeah.
And over the years, I've collected a repertoire of, I love finding myths or variations of myths
Mm.
that are not known to people or that are surprising. And since I have a background in Roman archaeology, you know, classical mythology is very much my wheelhouse. And I'm just loving it so much. And I found so many unique stories that I don't think are included in most of the mythology collections.
Mm.
and I just really love working on it. But I have a deadline, in a week, so I have
No.
to finish. I have to cut it off somewhere and be like, no more stories are going into this book. But I love it, and I think it's gonna be some great stories in there.
Yeah. So it sounds like research is a really big part of your storytelling process. Do you use
Absolutely.
most of the stories that you research in the telling that you do, or is it more
Yes.
the research?
Yes.
Yeah.
Part of it is actually part of my day job with the foundation,
Mm,
because I supply our volunteer storytellers with new stories
mm,
regularly.
mm,
So every, 4 times a year, they get a larger collection of like 15 to 20 new stories that
mm.
they can use in their volunteer work. So it's actually my job to keep finding new stories and translating them and typing them up and doing the background research so they
Yeah.
don't have to do all that.
Yeah.
But I also just love doing it. I actually teach workshops on storytelling research because
Mm,
I've amassed a lot of, techniques and tricks and
yes.
resources, websites, and all of those things over the years.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, it's one of the big things that I do is track down stories and research sources and tale types and all of
mm.
those, um, dorky library research things
Oh,
and archival
you're
research things that I
speaking
really
to
love.
a soul sister here. I love research process. It's my light up space. I really love doing it. So,
Right?
yeah, it's just the best. And like when you said that, I was like, oh my gosh, that would be the best thing ever. Like Christmas time. So
It
when
is.
when you're telling, you obviously have the research process, but do you go through like a rehearsal process, or you're at a point now where you can just know a story and go tell?
I practice by telling the stories.
Hmm.
So I'm a traditional teller in a sense that I don't prepare a performance.
Hmm.
Usually when I do a performance, I prepare more stories than how many would fit into a show.
Hmm.
And then I decide on the spot, like looking at the audience and kind of getting a feel of the atmosphere
Yeah.
and meeting the audience. I just decide on the spot which story I'm going to tell from a much larger repertoire
Hmm.
than what would fit a 1 hour show.
Hmm.
So I'm not I don't do a lot of like rehearsal type
Hmm.
preparation. I like getting to know the stories really well. And
Hmm.
then I do, practice telling. So, but I need an audience. I can't
Hmm.
practice alone. I can't just like talk to myself. That never works for me. So I usually like talk about the story to my friends.
Hmm.
Um, I tell to the kids at work. My mother teaches high school English, so I very often I go to her English classes and just, visit the English classes and go through the story a couple of times with an audience and see how it works. So I practice them by telling them,
Hmm.
and that's kind of how they take their own shape and
Hmm.
how they become a part of my repertoire. But for Mythoff, for specifically for the mythology event, we have a group of tellers here in Hungary, and we like to get together and work on our myths before a Mythoff together.
Hmm.
Not in terms of presentation necessarily, but just like piecing the stories together and making sure that they flow and
Hmm.
making sure that they fit into the 12 minutes, because
Hmm.
Mythoff has a 12-minute
Oh,
limit on the
wow. 12
stories.
minutes, 12 minutes for a myth. Whoa,
I
that's
know,
challenging.
I know, but it's part of the concept. It was
Yeah.
actually Mythoff was started by Claire Murphy. So,
Mm.
or Claire and a bunch of Scandinavian tellers got together and they did the first Mythoff in 2009, I think.
Mm.
And the idea is that it's a very quick, kind of playful contest between myths and
Mm.
not tellers. So the audience gets to vote, but they don't vote on who the best teller is.
Yeah.
They get questions about the myths, and then they vote on the myths. So, like which monster would you keep as a pet? Like which hero would you go on a date with? And that's what they vote on. But it's very quick. We
Yeah.
usually have 6 or 8 tellers a night. in rounds, in pairs, and the part of the entire concept is that the stories don't go on for very long, but it's always a struggle, and we always
Yes.
want to go on longer. But that would be a different format.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a great fun thing to do, to introduce. So do you have a favorite moment in telling in your career?
So many.
Yeah.
So many. It's just I've been very lucky to have a lot of really fun places to tell and listen to stories. A couple of years ago, the Fest conference, part of the Fest conference was organized at the Triple Border in Germany, Belgium, and the Netherlands. And they did a storytelling festival in the cathedral in Aachen.
Oh, wow.
At night. So we had this amazing space, in a cathedral, and I got to tell a story in there.
Wow.
With like Charlemagne's throne looking down at me as I am telling a very pagan story in the cathedral. But yeah, that was a beautiful setting. I One of my big favorites was when I was in Ireland, also a Fest conference, and we had a festival after, and I've loved Irish legends and Irish mythology since I was a teenager, and that was the first time I actually got to be in Ireland, and it was just stunning to be in all the places that I recognized from the stories, and I knew the names, on the highway signs and everything, and we were by Slievegullin, which is a mountain that appears in a lot of Irish stories. And it was right by the hotel. And I was like, we're climbing the mountain. And we climbed up. And I love Fianna Tales, Fionn McCool legends.
Yes.
And that mountain is a very important place in those stories. And there's a magic lake on top of the mountain. And there's a very old burial site that they believed was the house of a witch. And we climbed up there, and because some of the other attendees didn't know the stories attached to the mountain, I actually got to tell the stories on the mountain where they happen. And just I love moments like that when you are in the locality where the story is taking place. And it was 20 years after I fell in love with Irish legends, and to actually be in that place telling that story was amazing.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine. I've just told the Morrigan, and I've never been to Ireland, so I almost went over for the weekend just so I could get a sense of it.
It's incredible. It makes all the difference. I mean, I remember the first time I was in Greece, and once again, I've loved Greek mythology since I was a teenager, and I had binders like collecting, cutouts from magazines about Greek myths. This is, the 1990s. But the first time I was actually in Greece, and when the first time you stand, by the sea and a Greek landscape, and you look around, and it's springtime, and the sunshine and the sea and the islands that you can see. It's like, now I get it. That's the moment when I got Greek mythology. Like, this is what feels like Greek mythology. It's like, I really believe that being in a landscape where a certain set of stories was born adds a lot to understanding those stories.
That's a good excuse to go traveling then, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And I love traveling.
So this podcast is called The Heart of Storytelling. So what do you think is at the heart of storytelling?
Great question. I think it is a very human need to connect. To me, storytelling is about connection. And in that moment, when I am with an audience, that is ours, that is our time. That's just, it's us together. The story is very much shaped by their reactions. By, I'm telling this story to them specifically. I don't recite, I don't really perform stories as much as I am telling them to an audience, which is why I I mean, I enjoy online storytelling, but it's by far not the same experience to me as being in one space, in a shared space with a live audience. I think it's a form of very unique connection. It's it's 100% attention on the audience, on shaping the story the way they need to hear it. And that's why we do that. That's why we do storytelling with Virág as well. Is that we are in that time we spend with the kids in the foster home. That's theirs. That's, I am here for you. I am here to spend time with you, to give you attention, to give you this story, and this story is yours. And I am telling it the way you like it, the way you want to hear it. So I think the heart of storytelling to me is connection.
That's a very common answer, interestingly. But I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all. I want to go back to, you talked about this reactions from the audience twice now. So I'm curious at what it is you're looking for in the audience when you are gauging their reactions. What do you look for?
Enjoyment. Okay, so this is, returning to your previous question, to me, the heart of my storytelling is that feeling of, this is such a cool story, you need to hear this. And I never told a story just because it fit the theme or because it's, famous or it has a good moral or something. When I select my stories, I always go for that gut feeling of, this is awesome. And that's kind of what I want to see in the audience. I love seeing that enthusiasm reflected when, isn't this such a cool story? And that's how I share most of my stories. It's just I pick stories that I love, and that I think are really exciting and or beautiful or touching. And then I'm watching the audience and I am hoping that they are enjoying it as much as I like telling these stories. And they don't necessarily have to hear it the same way, or they don't necessarily have to take away the same message or the same feelings that I do, but I'm hoping that they are having that resonance with the story that I do when I select these stories. So I'm looking for enjoyment, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're very similar beings, because I tell stories that I love, and I'm a bit the same. I really want to tell you this story because I love this story and it's great and you'll love it too. And it's and the research I've done will help you understand it better, and all that sort of stuff.
Like, okay, so this is the cool part.
That's it. Wait for the 3-teeter cow.
I know. And I teach the volunteers, like anybody that I've ever taught storytelling to. That's my main, rule that I have for storytelling. Only tell stories that you really enjoy.
Yeah. So why do you think, it's a very tech-heavy world that we live in, and AI and all that stuff is happening? Why do we need the oral tradition still?
I think specifically because it's the kind of spending time together that is being replaced more and more with other things. And I'm not against social media. I love a lot of parts of social media. I'm not against popular media. I love movies. I love TV shows. I love reading comic books. Like it's a bunch of stuff. I don't think that it's against storytelling in any shape or form. In fact, I love finding traces of traditional stories in popular media, and I blog about it. It's called Story Spotting. On my blog. So I don't think it has to be either or, but I do think that it's a huge gift in these days to spend time with someone telling a story without it having, educational obligations or a set of rules or whatever it is. I think one of the best gifts that we can give to people is this kind of attention and taking the time to not do, bite-sized things or not do a bunch of extra bells and whistles. It's just talking to each other. And it's actually the philosophy of Virág as well, is as an organization that supports children in state care, we
Mm.
could do a lot of things. We could collect a lot of material donations. We could, raise funds or whatever for them. But we've found over the course of the past 15 years that what they need most is personal attention. It's attention and quality time. And I
Mm.
think storytelling does that for people. It's attention and quality time. And but I don't think AI will take storytellers' jobs. This is the question everybody keeps talking about these days because of
Mm.
how big AI got, how fast, and especially my artist friends are
Mm.
really struggling with everything that's happened with AI.
Mm.
But with actual, until AI walks into a foster home and sits down and like
Mm.
holds two kids on its lap and tells them a story that is theirs,
Mm.
that's AI is not going to take a storyteller's job.
Oh, I love that description. So just thinking about the future with you and what you're planning to do, you've got some books. Is there anything going to shift with you with the storytelling? What's going to happen in the future?
Well, I have more book projects in the works. I have some travels planned out, which I always look forward to. I'm gonna be in Glasgow this summer for the Fest conference
Oh, awesome.
in June, which I'm really excited about, and I'm going to do a presentation about Mythoff. So I'm really looking forward to that. There's still a lot of festivals I would love to go to. A lot of different types of performances and projects I would love to do. Also, new storytelling adventure. I have a kid now, so whole different kind of storytelling,
Yes.
and I really love exploring that. Telling stories as a mom as
Yeah.
opposed to as a performing. Tough crowd, much harder than being a performing storyteller of any type. But I love it. So that's a new adventure, and I'm really enjoying it. And we'll see what else the future holds. But there is still a lot of travels that I would love to do,
Mm.
and a lot of festivals and conferences and gatherings to visit
Mm.
around the world. So we'll see how
Amazing.
it goes.
Well, it's a shame I'm not staying. Would have seen you in Scotland otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how can people find you if they want to find out more about you and your books and what you're doing?
I think the best way is either my blog, which is called the Multicolored Diary, or through Facebook. I have a Facebook page as Zalka Csenge, or Mastodon. I left Twitter because Twitter
Mm.
after 10 years, but
Mm.
Mastodon is a very fun alternative I found.
Mm.
And it's gathered a nice group of storytellers and folklorists and researchers of various academic fields, and it seems like it's a good community to be online. So on Mastodon, they can also, those are the main channels that I'm active on, is either my blog or Facebook or Mastodon.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this chat with you and learned so much
Thank you.
about it. I really enjoyed it. So thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, that's our episode for today. I hope you've enjoyed learning about storytelling and folktale, fairytale, myth, legend, or personal tales, wonder tales, all sorts of stories, and the art of storytelling, and why we really need to continue using it today. You can find more information about me at alyssacurtain.com or at Alyssa Curtain Stories on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. I hope that you can find your heart in storytelling.